guidance. Like if I'm going around the side of a hill, if I've got contour farming, as they call it, and I've developed a curve, and now it's going to follow that same curve. And that means it's got to collect data all the time. You know, where am I on this curve? Here, I've just got a point there and a point there, and then it lines me up so I'm on that next swath. The other one is center pivot type stuff. You know, I'm driving around the center pivot, which in the West, they have center pivot, this big irrigation system that sprays like this. And so you drive, you know, they've got them set up, so, oh, it's a center pivot, so I'm just going to go back and forth like this. Sometimes they plant the corn in that direction, or it's wheat or whatever. Okay, so those are several systems that are used. How did guidance systems start? Anybody know where the origination of guidance systems came from? What industry? Was it ag? It was ag. It was ag. But it wasn't field ag. It was aerial ag. And this was when I first got into this, I worked with aerial applicators. And they found that they use this to fly fields. Because they don't know where they are. You know, I'm spraying again. And so how did they figure out where to spray in the field? The old days. Anybody know? Eyeball. We usually had the guy on the ground. And what did the guy on the ground do? He'd have a flag. He'd have it in a pickup truck. He'd be over here, and the guy'd fly by. And then he'd get his truck, and he'd go drive over here, get out, and he'd have this flag, and he'd drive. Usually you get the guy at high school to do this. He had no equipment on, no mask, anything on. And so the initial one, parallel swathing unit, was called the automatic flagman. Because you don't need a flagman anymore. It just lines you up, and these guys thought it was great. And the nice thing about it, and so that's what this is. This is an aerial shot of a guy spraying a whole bunch of fields during the day. Just GPSed himself, had this parallel swath. And here he is spraying this field. And then what he does is, when he turns on his stuff to dump, push the button, it does whatever. It records that I'm on. I'm spraying. And then at the end of the field, shuts it off. Turns it on, shuts it off. So one of the nice things about this is not only to get parallel swaths, but the guy over in this field here says, hey, you just flew over me and sprayed my lettuce. And the guy goes, well, here's the map. And they actually use this in court. Here's the map. I'm not spraying over there. Yeah, I flew over your field, but I didn't spray your field. Now, I did spray this field right there, because you can see that they left it on a little bit too long past that field. And there's a couple, I sprayed that field too bad there. But I'm not spraying over here. So it's really sort of not only was it helpful in parallel swathing, but it was very helpful in lawsuits as you're spraying fields. And you can see, oh, there's some overlap here. Or, did you spray my whole field? Yeah, I sprayed your whole field. There's a map. I sprayed your field. So it's very useful for those sorts of things. Not only the parallel swathing, but tracking where the flights are. So the original one was the automatic flagging. Now, I think those are all guidance systems. I don't know if they have any auto-steer planes set up right now to fly you over. So the next thing that I'm going to talk about is the auto-steer planes, or not the auto-steer planes, but auto-steering, not from a guidance system where you're steering yourself, but it steers itself. Same concept, but a lot more expensive for several reasons. One is typically these are more accurate units. Okay, these are systems where they got to get in, because typically when you're driving in a field yourself, you only got like 5 or 10 inches of accuracy driving in your field. You could be off by this much trying to follow the path. But these things can be closer to 2 to 3 inches. So it actually drives better at certain points than a human driver, in theory. But it does have its problems. So the auto guide system is the same system, but you can see that it's running $26,000. Is that right? Good God. Yep, $26,000 for centimeter, 0.4-inch accuracy with RTK and a base station. Oh, looks like you've got to pay an extra $8,000 for the base station. So, yeah, this can be pretty expensive stuff. This one's $38,000. I don't know if you can see that. It's $38,000 somewhere down there. $38,000. So this can be very expensive, and so only the people in California usually can afford this. No, only high-dollar crops, and I kind of use that jokingly, but in California a lot of this is being used for strawberries and vegetables and things like that. $40,000 units. So these can be, pretty expensive. Now, how does it actually work? There's two technologies or two things that's used for this. John Deere has come out with the Green Star Auto Track. And what it uses is basically a little motor that works off the steering wheel. And so you take your steering wheel off, and it's just like a little knob that kind of grabs your steering wheel and turns. And so your steering wheel is actually going back and forth. You get your hands off and things turning back and forth on itself. And so that's this concept of you can adapt it, you can bring it into your steering wheel. A lot of them will have little knobs that go back and forth that turn your steering wheel. Other ones will have, and that's the last page I believe you have. No, yeah, you got just a description of that and how it works and its benefits. But some of them will actually have, let's see if I got it. Yeah, it will have a hydraulic unit because most of the steering, a lot of the steering these days is hydraulic steering. And so instead of actually going into the steering wheel and doing this, it'll just tap right into your hydraulic steering and run the hydraulic fluid to one or the other side of the piston that's steering the wheels and runs with that. So those are kind of the two techniques. Steering wheel control with electric motor or hydraulic motor, or essentially embedding that into a power steering, hydraulic power steering type of operation. Okay, last thing that I want to talk about, throw a lot of stuff at you real fast, is, that's not the last thing, that's the last thing. How do I set this up? When I get out there, I'm going to be programming this. I want to show you, the kind of programs to do. But the type of information in terms of guidance config is I've got to put in my swath width. I've got to determine my pattern type. Is it A to B or is it curved? I've got to determine whether I want to snap to swath or create swath. That means that if I come back up, it snaps over or it lines me up and determines the next swath that I'm going to be on. Headland zone, look ahead. See, GPS doesn't tell you where you are, it tells you where you were, but this is actually looking ahead to say, steer to be where you're going to be in about 2 seconds. So my GPS is actually looking ahead in that. Now, it kind of creates problems when you're doing a turn, because if you have to look ahead too high, it's throwing you, on the other side of the field. But the nice thing is when you straighten out, it's looking ahead, so you could be on the line, but maybe, on the line, but off to an angle, and it tells you you're over here. So you got do a correction on your steering. That look ahead's there. Certain offsets, where's the GPS with respect to the sprayer, and maybe lateral offsets, and they say put the GPS in the middle, that sort of thing. So those are the types of things that you've got to program in, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. We did some parallel swathing when it first came out. Last overhead. Parallel swathing. Yeah, right. But I know this was parallel swathing because, and this was a while back when parallel swathing first came out. I know this was parallel swathing because we actually dug trenches that we surveyed in, and we actually put the tractor wheel in that trench and drove parallel. Does it look like we did that? No, it doesn't. Okay. Why doesn't it look like we did that? Let's say we start here. This is all differential GPS. Some of it is. Okay. And some of it, this is when SA was on.